This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Pei Dalid, and we pick it up on the bottom of Pei Gimel and Beis. Baruch Hashem, we began a new Perek HaChayvel yesterday, dealing primarily with Chavala, with damages to start at least. We're 3 lines into the wide lines as the Gemara continues discussing the damage of Nezek. The Mishnah taught us that there's Hey Dvarim, Chamisha Dvarim, that one is obligated to pay. Nezek Sar, Riboy Sheves, Ubaishes. We began the discussion of Nezek, and we continue 3 lines into the wide lines. Tanya, we learned in a Braisa. Rav Destoi, Ben Yehuda, Imer Ayin Tachazayin, Mamain. As we learned yesterday, a bit of an elaborate drasha, but ayin tachazayin does not mean literally that if one injures someone else, that he is liable to actually have his eye knocked out. But rather what it means is that one has to pay the monetary compensation of the eye. So says the Gemara, says Rav Testoi Rav Yehuda Mamain. But he continues, Ataymer Mamain. Mamish. How do you know? Maybe the Torah indeed means an eye. Ayin Mamish. So explains the Gemara, Amart, I'll teach you as follows. Harisha say, "Eina shall say Gedai Levin shall say Ketana." Hey, Achani Kai Rebbe Ayin Dachazayin. Says Rav Destoi Rav Yehuda, there's a fundamental flaw, even almost in logic, to say that one should pay an eye for an eye. Because how are you going to reckon with the fact that sometimes one's eye is larger, one's eye is smaller? Perhaps you're going to say, maybe one would say in a case like this, in a case in which the eyes are not equal, that's when you have to pay the eye. But in other cases, you would actually pay, in the case the eyes are not equal, that's when you'd pay mamay. But in case that the eyes are equal, you have to pay for the eye. On that says Rav Destoi Rav Yehuda Atayra Aimer Mishpat Echad Yelachem. And for there we learn now Mishpat Hashav Kulchem. That's the one Mishpat, one law to all of them. So Rav Destoi Rav Yehuda proves to us logically. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam She'akol. Rav Destoi Rav Yehuda proves to us that it cannot be that one is paying with his eye, because then how do you deal with the scenario that eyes are not equal? Retorts the Gemara, Amri, my koshya. What's your question if the eyes aren't equal? Delma nahira shakomine. Maybe ayin tachas ayin means no, an eye. What is an eye? An eye's sight. Nahira. Remove his sight, and therefore it's irrelevant if it's a larger eye, it's a smaller eye. Nahira amrachman and ishkomine. The Torah says, take sight. And therefore you're asking, what if one's eye is smaller, one eye is larger? That's irrelevant. It's the same ability to see. If you're not going to tell me this, as we turn over to Peidalut and Aleph, how do you ever have a case of capital punishment where a larger person kills a younger kills an older? How could you ever invict the death penalty if Peidalim and Aleph, the second line, Atayra Amra, says the Torah, so how are you ever going to explain such a scenario? Rather, what are you forced to say? Ella, you have to say, Nishama shakal minei. You took his nishama, you took his life. Nishama Amar Achman and Nishkal minei teaches the Torah, take back the life. And with that, the Gemara refutes the ideology and the makar of the Stoiber of Yehuda as he tried to prove another source. They have to pay mimayna, not the eye itself. So Tanya Idach continues the Gemara in the last narrow line with another potential attempt in teaching us that ayin tachazayin is mammon. Tan Idach Rashbi Oimer teaches of Shemin Yochai. Ayin tachazayin means mamayin. At Oimer mamayin, you tell me it means mamayin, says the Gemara in the first wide line. Oyin Ella, ayin mamish. Or maybe it means an actual eye. Hareshaya suma visime. What if someone is blind and you knocked at his eye? Kite. Or what if someone already was missing a limb, vikite, and you knocked off his other arm? Chiger, he's lame, vachiger, and you further lame him. Hechani mekayim bazeh. In such a scenario, says Rashbi, how would I fulfill ayin tachas ayin? Says Rashbi, we always have to have the same judgment, the same mishpat, the same halacha. So therefore, from there proves of Shimon Yochai, it must be that you're paying mamai, because that's the only way we would have that in all scenarios, whether one was prior blind or prior lame, that he would have the same halacha. Responds the Gemara, no raya amri my kosher dome echad avshar avshar echad avshar avshar. How? Maybe it's only if it's possible. If it's not possible, then about he'd be butter. Do you like him? If you're not going to say this, treifa shargis hashalem my avdinon lay. What are we going to say in the scenario that a treifa, a person who's prone, who's about to die, kills a healthy person? What are we going to say? You can't execute a treifa. He's legally considered like he's no longer alive. And rather, patuna lay, and says the Gemara, no makar from Rashbi. Continues the Gemara again. We're trying to find a source that ayin tachas ayin does not mean literally, and rather it means mamain. Continues the Gemara on the 7th line. Tana Devei Rav Yishmael Tana. Amar Kra says the Torah Kain Yinasein Bai Ve'in Nesina Elamamin. It says with regard ayin tachas ayin, and continues the pasuk shever tachas shever ayin tachas ayin shein tachas shein, and the pasuk ends off kasher yitin mum ba'adam Kain Yinasein Bai. And the wordage of so too you shall give to him, nisina, to give over, says the Gemara, is a terminology referencing mamain. Ask the Gemara if that's true. Are you going to tell me that the same thing is mamain when the pasuk says you placed a mum in your friend? Of course not. It means that you damaged him. Of course not that it means monetarily. Of course it means damages. So what are you going to say by us? So Amri Dverav Yishmael, Kra Yisera Darshi. They have another pasuk. Mechti, Ksiv, it says the Torah Vishkitin Mambami Isai, Kasher also that which he does, Ken Yinasein Lai, Ken Yinasein Bai Lamali. So why do we need it by us? The extra terminology teaches us Shemami Na Mamain. Says Gemara, very good, but 1 second, Kasher Yitin Mamba Adam Lamali. Why do we need a pasuk that teaches us the same way a mum is placed in a man? Explains the Gemara, no, I did buy in the Mechtav Ken Yinasein Bai. Kazanami kasher yitin mum ba'adam, even though you're right, it is indeed extra and not relevant to teach that. Says the Gemara, trying again, Devei Rav Chia. Again, multiple sources trying to prove that when one damages another, he's not liable to have the same done to him, but rather it's only tashlum, it's money. Devei Rav Chia Tana. Amar Kra, says the Torah yad biyad, that you have to give a hand for an hand, and for there he darshins Rav Chia. Something that is given hand to hand. That is mammon. Ask the Gemara if that is true. What are you going to do with the pasuk that says regel v'regel nami hachihu? So Amrit v'Rachia crazy darshi. Again, similar to Yishmael, Rachia learned as an extra pasuk. Michti ksev asita lakasher zaman nasos lachiv. It says vayidim zayim you do for him like he tried to do to someone else. He's like mamish. Yeah, if you're going to tell me you actually do to him what he did to someone else, yad biyad lomali. So rather, shmamina mamain. So it must be to teach us that no, it's a monetary compensation. But then says Gemara, if that is true, regel b'regel lomali. Again, answers the Gemara, parallelism, I did because of yad biyad, because of nami, regel b'regel. So numerous rayos and rebuttals as to whether we have additional sources that ayin ba'ayin is a monetary payment. Continues the Gemara with another potential source. Abaye Amar teaches Abaye, about 15 lines, so the wide lines, first line is Abaye. Teaches Abaye, I see the Tana Devei Chizkiah. I can tell you from Tana Devei Rabbi Chizkiah. The Tana Devei Chizkiah, the Yeshiva of Chizkiah, they taught ayin tachas ayin, nefesh tachas nefesh, v'lo nefesh ba'ayin tachas ayin. It's only 1 for 1, not 2 for 1. Therefore, If you're going to tell me that you take out someone else's eye, we take out your eye, says Abaye, says, quoting from the yeshiva of Chizkiah Zimn the Mishkachas Law, Ayin v'nefesh tachas ayin. Why? The Bahadi, the Iver le nafkali nishma say, says Chizkiah, as you're trying to knock out his eye, his life could leave. And therefore, we're not going to knock out his eye because we don't want to cause a potential fatality for no reason. Says the Gemara, my kusha, what's your question? Dilma mimid amdinalei. Bezdin has to evaluate. They're calling the doctor. And they figure out if they evaluate that this guy is strong enough to have his eye knocked out without losing his life, then we do such. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Says the Gemara, okay, 1 second. This is a very fine line. What happens if we evaluate that he's able to endure getting his eye knocked out? Vavdinan, and we did that. And then what happened? Unfortunately, he was nifter. Imayis lemos. If he died, let him die. Milay Tanan, do we now learn in the Mishnah, Gabe Malkus, the same concept. Duo Meis, Tachas Yadei Potter. So says the Gemara, that is indeed what we would do. Therefore, from here we not be able to prove that ayin ba'ayin it only means mama in monetary payment and not reality blinding the person. Rav Zvid Mishmei de Rava continues the Gemara, trying to prove the source that ayin tachas ayin again is a monetary compensation. Amar Kra says the Torah, Petza tachas potza. Says the pasuk, a wound for a wound. We're 8 lines from the Y lines. This teaches us you have to pay for the tsar, for the pain of that which happened in the place of nezik, in the place of damages. You're going to tell me that you actually take out his eye. So what does it mean you pay for additional tsar? He who knocked out his eye, you get your eye knocked out. It's the same thing. So what's the additional payment that would be necessary? Response, my kusha, inish. Maybe this guy is a little bit more of a delicate person. Therefore, he'll have more tsar. And those who are not so delicate, less leitzara. So what's your question? What would the difference be? Says the Gemara, and the difference would be that to give the difference. Therefore, you can't approve from here, because therefore maybe that's what the pasuk is teaching us. And therefore we cannot prove that ayin tachas ayin means mamain. And finally, Rapapa Shvei Derava Amar Kra. The last attempt to prove ayin tachas ayin means money. Amar Kra, 3 lines for the white lines. V'Rabba Yerabe Elitin Rafu b'Makom Nezik. You have to pay for the medical bills in the places of damage. It says the Gemara of Yisach if you tell you have to actually blind the other guy's eye. Why would you have to pay for medical damages? Just like Reuven blinded Shimon's eye, and then Bezdin blinds Reuven's eye. So Reuven has to pay for his own medical bill. Why would he have to also pay for Shimon? Says my kusha, tell me you get the Salik Basrei. Hi. Salik Basrei hi. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Maybe what the pasuk is teaching us is some salik basrei eye that if heals quicker, some it doesn't heal as quick. Again, just like we said by Rav Zid. Excuse me, there's one more Mikar that Rapapa Shvei Derava was similar to Rav Zvid Mishei Deraba. Finally, on the first very wide line, Peidalad Amar Aleph, Ravashi Amar Asya Tachas Mishar. Says Ravashi, a Gezerah Shava, we should learn out from Shar. Ksevach, it says Be'as Ayin Tachas Ayin. Uksev Hasam Shar, it says Shalim Yishalim. Shar Tachas Ashar. You're going to pay a Shar for a Shar? So Malahala, and when it comes to the Shar, Mamain Afghan Mamain. Says the Gemara, what's your ayah? My Chazis, the Alpha is Tachas Me Shar. Maybe in the Alpha Tachas Me Adam. Tersev. Benasat Nefesh Tachas Nafesh. Ask the Gemara, I don't understand. Malal and Mamish, Afghan Mamish. Just like it says Nefesh Tachas Nefesh, it says Shar Tachas Shar. So you're bringing a proof that Shar Tachas Shar means that just like you pay monetary payment for the goring the axe, so too by not get the eye. What do you mean? Maybe just like you get killed for killing someone else, you have to lose your eye. Answers the Gemara, Amri, done in Nizakim, Vein done in Nizakim Mimisa. Don't learn out from a human, because that's where he got killed. Says more 1 second after Rabba. Makes more logical to dan people from people. Ella Amar Ravashi. So therefore Ravashi says, okay, let's try one last attempt. Mitachas Asher Ina Yalifla. Says Ravashi, learn Xer Shava 4 from the pause that says that which he afflicted her. Yalif Le Adam Adam. Unizakin, minizakin over there, it's Adam Adam and its damages. And that is the final source of Ravashi, mitachas asher ina, that ayin tachas ayin indeed means monetary payments and not having one's eye knocked out. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Once we have a makar, now the Gemara is going to prove this in on the fifth Y line. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Before we get to the actual proofs, we first prove a dissenting and arguing opinion. Says Rav Elazar, indeed, one has to ayin mamish. Mamish al kadaitoch. Rav Elazar, less like Cholani Tanoid. Rav Elazar not hold of all these Tanoim. Amar Rabba Loimar. This Rav Elazar is teaching us she'ein shamin oisai kavid. We don't value him like an evid. Amle abaya like kaman kibin charin. Bet charin miyasli tamei. What does that mean? Does a bet charin have a value? Allah Ravashi Loimar she'ein shamim oisai benizik ella b'mazik. You evaluate only by the mazik, not by the nizik. Says the Gemara, let's tell a story of someone who got damaged. There was a donkey that knocked off the hand of a child. Go evaluate the 4 items. Our Mishnah said there are 5 things you have to pay for. You have to pay for nezik. Ella Nezik asking, I don't understand. Our Mishnah, which was discussing Adam who damages, that's what you got 5. Over here is a Chamar, and the Chamar does Eina Mishalim Ella Nezik. Only has to pay for damages. Amr Lo, Zilu Shamli in this case, go evaluate the Nezik. V'haka of de Bailam Mishami and evaluate like an Evid. Amr Lo, Zilu Shamiu Kavda. Amr Lo, Avodi Nuka Labina de Zile Bay Milsa. The only way to evaluate a bike and have it is to degrade the child by putting him on the selling block. Amr lev kamachayves le'yanuka. Amr leho lechigadam afaisina leho lemidi. It's true, says the Gemara. Means when the child grows up, then that's when you have to be mafayis meina chanami. There's no way to compensate while the child is young due to the challenges of devaluating the child, embarrassing, degrading the child. Therefore, when he gets older is when you would be mefayisim. Says the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom of the Amid Ahutura, the Alas, Yadim Dininuka, there was an ox that chewed off the hand of a child, also the Rava Amr Lozel, Shaimu Kavde. Evaluate like an Eved. Amr Lev, Amar Udamar, Bamar said, Kol Anishab Kaved ain't giving us a bivavel. We don't do such a bavel. Amr Lo Light Sricha, Titavas. We need it only for a case that if the owner, the victim, is tafas, he grabs something in compensation for that which happened, we have to know how much he gets to keep. Meaning, we don't pay kanasim in Bavel. But what if he takes matters in his own hand, then the halachas he keeps it? We have to know what is the evaluation. Once we're on the short topic of that ein kaivin oisai bebavel, says the Gemara, 2 lines to the bottom, Rava l'tamei da'amai Rava. Rava is going according to his own reasoning, which Rava said, Niske shar b'shar, Niske shar ba'adam, kaivin oisai bebavel. But Niske adam ba'adam and Niske adam b'shar, those ein kaivin oisai bebavel. Ask the Gemara on the last line, what's the difference? Why should Niske adam ba'adam and Niske adam b'shar? You don't need judges. Nami that you need judges in such a scenario, and we don't have. Says the Gemara, but if that's true, on the top of Peidalim Abayz, the difference is that we're just carrying, the Bezdin is allowed to enforce the payment as they're just acting as an extension of the court in Eretz Yisrael. Midi Davis Aidas of Hois. Just like when one admits to a loan, we can make him pay. But if that's the case, so the Gemara cannot understand. The Gemara is running into a roadblock trying to figure out what is the reason why there will be a different din regarding Adam V'Adam and Adam Bishar. So explains the Gemara 5 lines down. Peidalam Ebeis Amri Kika Avdino Shechlusayu. But midin the Kimla Bigavei. But midin the like Kimla Bigavei Loy Avdinan Shechlusayu. The like Kimlan Rashi says Ganacha Dvino L'Mishaymei. Only things which we know for sure, but that which requires an evaluation that the Batei Dinim in Bavel cannot do, because they're not just carrying out the shlichus of Eretz Yisrael, because you have to actually make a evaluation, and that is not done in Bavel. Amri says more 1 second. Shar b'shar v'shar v'adam nami lo kim lo b'gavei. We also don't know the evaluation. Elo, rather, what are we going to say? Paichasi, go ahead and check. How much an ox is sold for in the marketplace. But if that is true, Adam b'shar nami b'chazi echadam zamni eved b'shuka. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Again, what is the fundamental difference? We also don't know what a shar is evaluated. We don't know what an Adam is evaluated at. So there should be absolutely no difference. And rather, in all scenarios, we should just go see what is the going rate in the marketplace. V'oid says the Gemara, Tashlam Kefel v'Tashlam Arba v'Chamisha Tekaitzi Navi Shluchosayu. The payments of Kefel, the payments of 4 or 5, we should do the same thing because those are defined, those are definitive. So Amri says the Gemara, you're right. Kikav Din Shluchosayu b'Memayna Babekanasa Layavdinan Shluchosayu. Says the Gemara, fundamental difference. If the payments are mamain, then again we're figuring out at what level the courts in Bavel are allowed to act as extensions of the court in Eretz Yisrael. The courts in Bavel don't have a taikif, don't have a power onto their own. So says the Gemara, they could only act as an extension regarding to mamanis, not with regard to kenas and not with regard to fines. Ask the Gemara, we're back to square one. What about Adam? Explains the Gemara, Kika Avdina Shlichusaya v'Milsa Dishchichi. So finally concludes the Gemara that it has to do with how common the story is. If something is common, this is very similar. So that only common things we make zera derabbanans on. So too over here says the Gemara, that which is common, the Batei Dinim in Bavel will be able to act as a shliach of the Batei Dinim in Eretz Yisrael. But if it's not common, then they will not. Says the Gemara, it's all about how common it is in the first wide line of Beidalid Amid Beis, Hare Baishes, and Pigam, Tishchiach, and therefore Nevesh Lichusaya, they should have to pay that as well. Amri Achanami, it is true they will pay Baishes and Pigam. Tarababa Agvi Arba Meya Zuzi Labaishes. Says the Gemara of Alesla Rababa. What do you mean? But we don't hold the Rababa. Why? They wanted to do such, and they said, no, it's Bavel, and we can't collect Kanasim of Baish and Begam in Bavel. Ella rather explains the Gemara, Ki Avdinan Shechlusayu, Be'emilsa Dishchichi, Vis, Bechisaron Kes. So in the give and take of the Gemara, we're figuring out and understanding that which the Batei Dinim in Bavel had the power to enforce. Says the Gemara that which is common, number one. And now we're adding on that which has a chesaron kiss, someone will lose, that's when Bezin will get involved. Avol milsa d'shchicha, it could be common. But v'lesa chesaron kiss, or inami milsa d'shchicha, it's not common. V'ezbe chesaron kiss, then lo yavdinan shechusayu, Bezdin would not get involved. Hilkach, and therefore, the Gemara concludes. Adam be Adam, if one person damaged another, afagav this bechsarin kiss. But since keep to shchicha lo yavdin shechusayu. However, boishes afgav the shchicha keep las bechsarin kiss lo yavdinan shechusayu. So says the Gemara, those are the differences. Ask the Gemara further, not content with this teretz. Vishar bishar koivin bibavel. Is it true? We said in Amud Aleph that one shar who damages another shar we would indeed collect damages in Bavel. Ay v'amar Rava sharsha hizikain gayvin aisai be Bavel. Says the Gemara, Deizikman, Elim Dizik Adam. If this is a case of a shar that's azik, a shar that damages a person, Mari shar dazik Adam. Avilo Adam dazik Adam nami gavin aisai be Bavel. What would your question be? Even if a person damages a person, we don't collect. Certainly, if a shar damages a person, Elub Sheet, what must the case be? Dazik shar. We're talking about a case of a shard that damages a shard. And so how do we say in Amid Aleph that indeed we do collect for one shard damages the next? Explains the Gemara. Amri asam bitam acha bimud. Fundamental difference if it's a tam, whereas if it's a muad. When it's a tam, it's a kanas. When it's a muad, it's tashlumim. So if it's a muad, we would collect in Bavel, but not for a tam. Ask the Gemara of Amar Rava has taught us ein muad bibavel. There's no entity of muad possible in Bavel. Amri diayid hasam b'aisilach. It's true, but they determined that the animal was a muad in Eretz, and then he brought the animal to Bavel. But if it's such a unique and interesting case, it's certainly not common. But we said that which is not common, we don't do their shlichos in Bavel for Eretz Yisrael. Explains the Gemara even more. To asu rabbanon the hasam v'yayidu the hasam v'yayidu hacha, and they made him a muad over here. Says Gemara Shkayach, what did you help? It's so uncommon. Maybe very nice that you conjured up a case where they created the animal into a muad here in Bavel, but lemaisa it's not shliach. Vat amrit mosel shliach lo kavtin shluchasayu. Ella Kika Amar Rava finally concludes the Gemara. We have to say Rava is talking about a different case. B'shein ve'regal dimuadim b'techlasin inu, that there's a muad right away on shein ve'regal. We're going to stop over here. We'll pick it up from the damages of Sar in the next year. B'siyata dishmayo.